Hope Logan had always been a woman torn between duty, emotion, and impossible love. But now, for the first time in what felt like an eternity, clarity had struck sharp and final. Liam Spencer was dying. A fatal brain condition, cruel and inoperable, had cast a long shadow over his days, and Hope, upon learning the truth, knew immediately what she had to do. She would not let him fade away alone. She would not run, question, or delay. Their past may have been filled with missteps, but the time for regrets was over. She would stay with Liam until his last breath. Every second mattered now. And just as Hope made this silent vow in Liam's arms as her tearful words wrapped around him like a second skin, someone else heard them too. Carter Walton had been walking by the open doorway at Forrester Creations when Hope's voice, filled with emotion, stopped him cold. "I'm not going anywhere, Liam," she had whispered. "Whatever time we have left, we spend it together. No more goodbyes." Carter felt the words as a knife to the chest. He stood frozen, unable to move, each syllable echoing inside him. He didn't know Liam was terminally ill. All Carter heard was the woman he loved reaffirming her devotion to another man. And with that, every hope Carter had clung to of reconciliation, of forgiveness, of love collapsed. He turned and walked away, head down, heartbroken. It would have been easier if he had never loved her. It would have been easier if he hadn't once believed she might love him back. But he did, and now all he could do was return to his office, crushed and alone. But Carter wouldn't remain alone for long. Daphne Rose had been waiting. In the background for months, always poised, always watching, she knew exactly when to strike. Carter was vulnerable now, raw and exposed. And Daphne was ready to move in, offering the one thing Hope hadn't: presence. She didn't ask for anything complicated. She didn't press for explanations. She just wanted to be the person who didn't walk away. And this time, her persistence might finally pay off. Meanwhile, Liam, despite the slow decay eating away at his body, was more focused than ever. He had no time for petty rivalries. No interest in drawn-out drama. His final wish was painfully simple: peace. Peace for his children, peace for the women he had loved, and peace between Hope and Steffi. Two women who had spent years at odds over him. Now he wanted them to let go of the past and look towards something healthier, something better. And so, Liam called on the only person he trusted to carry that burden: Finn. Dr. John Finn Finnegan had married into the storm of the Spencer Logan Forrester saga and managed to keep his footing. Calm, dependable, and loyal to a fault, Finn had proven himself more than once. Now, Liam needed him again, not as a doctor, but as a mediator. Liam asked him to bring Hope and Steffi together. End the feuding. Create a future where their children wouldn't be poisoned by old resentments. Finn hesitated, of course. This wasn't medicine. It was emotional surgery. And unlike scalpels and sutures, hearts didn't heal so easily. But Finn, compassionate to the end, promised he would try. Back at Forrester, Carter wrestled with his demons. He knew he had no right to feel betrayed, not after how things had ended with Hope, not after his one-time lapse with Quinn. But feelings rarely followed logic. He loved Hope. He still did. And now she was gone again. This time, possibly forever. In a rare moment of weakness, he let Daphne in. She offered comfort. She offered escape. She offered a warm, willing body in a cold moment. And Carter, desperate for any relief, took it. Whether he meant to or not, Carter surrendered to Daphne physically, emotionally, if only for a night. But the timing could not have been worse. Hope, after a quiet conversation with Liam where he gently encouraged her to consider her life beyond him, decided to visit Carter. Liam wanted her to be happy, to move on someday, maybe even with Carter. He believed Carter could give her what he no longer could. He wanted Hope to be loved. Hope didn't agree with Liam, not yet, but she appreciated his faith in her future. So she went one last time to see Carter. What she walked in on shattered her. Daphne and Carter. Together. Intimate. Close. Hope didn't scream. She didn't interrupt. She simply turned and walked away, silent tears cutting lines down her cheeks. She had been ready to say goodbye to Liam, but not like this. Not by being thrust back into betrayal. She had come to possibly forgive Carter, to hear him out, to maybe believe there could still be something there. But now that door slammed shut. And this time, she was the one doing the closing. Carter found out later. He ran after her, tried to explain, but Hope was gone. The heartbreak had calcified. There was no space left for excuses. Not when Liam was dying. Not when her world was falling apart. Hope shut herself off to everyone except Liam and her daughter. She poured everything she had into making Liam's last days beautiful. And Liam, though in pain, beamed every time he saw her smile. Still, Liam's condition worsened. The tumor progressed. And the more he faded, the more determined he became. He called Finn again. This time, he didn't ask, he begged. "Promise me," Liam whispered. "Promise me you'll bring Hope and Steffi together. For the kids. For peace. Promise me." Finn promised. And so began the nearly impossible task of reconciling two women who had fought over the same man for years. Finn started slow, casual visits, shared child pickups, a coffee here, a playground meet there. Steffi was skeptical. Hope was distant. Daphne, sensing Hope's vulnerability and Carter's continued emotional conflict, redoubled her efforts. She dressed for seduction. She lingered too long. She whispered sweet nothings laced with promises. And Carter, broken by the loss of Hope, spiraled. He tried to stay strong, but the pain of watching Hope slip away again, this time into the arms of a dying man, was too much. Daphne, patient and strategic, wore him down. Soon, they were seen together more often at meetings, at lunches, at events. Rumors swirled. People whispered. But Carter couldn't shake the empty feeling inside. Daphne was there, yes. But Hope was gone. And he had helped drive her away. Back at the cabin, Hope and Liam shared moments that were equal parts joy and sorrow. Watching old videos. Laughing about memories. Holding hands under the stars. Hope told him everything she had never said. She cried with him. She slept beside him. She kissed him like she hadn't in years. And Liam, though weak, felt more alive in those final days than he had in months. As the end neared, Liam gathered everyone, Brooke, Ridge, Steffi, Hope, Finn, and asked for one final thing. No fighting. No drama. Just love, unity, understanding. And most importantly, forgiveness. He looked at Carter, standing silently in the back, and nodded. "Take care of her," he said softly. Carter bowed his head, speechless. Liam passed quietly, surrounded by family. The days after were a blur of grief, ceremony, and silence. Hope was a shell of herself. But true to her promise, she kept going. For Beth. For Liam. She avoided Carter. She didn't trust herself near him. The pain was still too fresh. The betrayal, still too raw. Carter, torn between guilt and desire, stayed distant. Daphne, sensing his hesitation, pulled back. Even she knew when she had lost. There would be no fairy tale ending here. Not for her. Not now. But maybe, in time, for Hope and Carter, something could still grow. For now, though, all that remained was the echo of Liam's final wish, peace. And in a rare moment of silence in the world of the bold and the beautiful, that wish, for a time, came true. Hope Logan was standing at a crossroads she never anticipated. The life she once had with Liam Spencer, the love, the history, the family, all of it had been fractured by time, betrayal, and shifting alliances. But now, with Liam's terminal diagnosis hanging heavy in the air, everything had changed. Suddenly, the petty conflicts, the jealousy, the indecision, none of it mattered anymore. All that mattered to Hope was time. Time with Liam. Time to heal. Time to love again before it was too late. Hope's resolve to reclaim what they had came to a head one quiet afternoon in the Forrester offices. Carter Walton, polished and professional as always, moved through the halls with his usual calm demeanor. But just as he passed by a partially open door, he froze. Hope's voice floated out, hushed but intense. She was speaking to Liam. "I don't want to waste another second apart," she said, her voice trembling. "You and me, our future is still here. We can make the most of whatever time we have left." Carter's face twisted in confusion and pain. He hadn't known. He hadn't heard anything about Liam's condition. All he heard was Hope pledging herself, body and soul, to a man Carter believed she'd already moved on from. To Carter, it felt like betrayal. It felt like another door slamming in his face, and he had stood at too many of those doors already. He backed away quietly, the words echoing in his ears. It stung not just because of what Hope said, but because he had let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, he was next in line for her heart. But with Liam back in the picture in such a dramatic, heartbreaking way, Carter saw no place for himself. And that's when Daphne entered the picture. Daphne had always been a quiet presence, just on the periphery. Smart, elegant, and sharp-tongued when necessary, she had carved out a space for herself at Forrester with sheer determination. She and Carter had shared glances before, a drink or two, but nothing serious until now. When Carter walked into the executive lounge that evening, visibly shaken, Daphne was there. She didn't ask questions. She simply offered a smile, a drink, and the kind of comforting silence only someone who understands heartache can provide. But the silence didn't last long. Their connection, long dormant, surged to life like a firecracker in a dry forest. One thing led to another, and soon they were locked in a passionate, impulsive moment neither of them had planned. Carter wasn't thinking. Daphne didn't ask him to. For just a moment, they both forgot the tangled mess of love, loss, and longing surrounding them. Unfortunately, Hope didn't. By pure chance or a cruel twist of fate, Hope found herself walking into the same executive lounge later that night, hoping to speak to Carter. Liam had told her gently but firmly, "You need to think about life after I'm gone, Hope. Carter's a good man. He could love you the way I wish I still could." Her heart was torn, but she agreed to at least talk to Carter. She needed clarity. She needed direction. She didn't expect to walk in on Carter and Daphne in the middle of a heated, breathless embrace. The sight hit her like a sledgehammer. The man she had thought might become her future, the man Liam had just encouraged her to pursue, was tangled in someone else's arms. Hope stood frozen, silent, eyes wide with disbelief. The emotional whiplash was too much. She turned and fled before they even noticed her. The next day, the emotional fallout was instant and raw. Hope confronted Carter, not with anger, but with a deep, wounded disappointment. Carter, blindsided, tried to explain, but what could he say? He hadn't known about Liam's condition. He thought Hope was pushing him away. He thought it was over. But for Hope, it wasn't just about Carter's choice. It was about the timing. The betrayal she felt wasn't rooted in jealousy, it was rooted in grief. Grief for a future that was evaporating, for a love she had been too slow to fight for, and for a man, Liam, who was slipping through her fingers more and more each day. Liam, Ever the selfless soul beneath all his missteps tried to comfort Hope. He insisted that what she saw didn't have to define her future. He told her that Carter was acting from pain, not indifference. But his words only made things worse. Hope couldn't pretend anymore. She couldn't toy with the idea of another man while her Liam, was quietly dying. So she made a decision. Hope threw herself back into her life with Liam. She canceled meetings. She cut off distractions. Every waking hour was now devoted to creating memories with him. Walks in the park, cooking dinner together, lying under the stars, laughing through tears. It was beautiful and tragic. The closer they got, the more unbearable the thought of losing him became. Meanwhile, Carter, crushed by the loss of yet another shot at real love, retreated emotionally. Daphne tried to keep things light, even playful, but Carter wasn't in it anymore. She had been a momentary escape. He knew it, and now she did too. Still, Daphne wasn't one to sulk. She'd been around long enough to know that love in LA was like a hurricane, unpredictable, short-lived, and almost always destructive. As Liam's condition worsened, the Forrester family began to rally quietly behind Hope. Steffi, though once a rival, understood the magnitude of what Hope was going through. Even Brooke and Ridge momentarily set aside their usual chaos to give their daughter space to grieve, love, and survive. But Liam had one last wish. He called Carter to his home, a quiet, intimate meeting away from the noise. Liam looked thin, pale, but peaceful. He told Carter what Hope hadn't about the tumor, the prognosis, and the real reason she had come back. And then he did the unthinkable. He asked Carter to be there for Hope when he no longer could. He asked him not to walk away, not to disappear. To wait. Carter, stunned and humbled, promised to do what he could. But it wouldn't be that simple. Hope had changed. The moment she saw Carter with Daphne, something inside her shifted. She didn't see Carter as safe anymore. She saw him as complicated, messy, human. And though she knew that wasn't fair, especially given her own indecision, she couldn't shake the image. It haunted her. And yet, as the weeks passed, Carter kept showing up. Not with flowers or grand declarations, but with patience. He helped with errands. He offered quiet companionship. He kept his promise to Liam not to pursue Hope, but to support her. Slowly, the wall between them began to crack. But the past has a cruel way of resurfacing. One evening, while checking on Hope, Carter ran into Daphne again, this time not in the lounge, but in the guest house, where she had been working on a design project for Zend. Old wounds opened. Words were exchanged. Accusations flew. And before either of them could stop it, passion ignited again, a toxic blend of anger and attraction. They fell into each other with the kind of desperation only people trying to forget someone else ever feel. The next morning, Hope saw them leaving together. She said nothing, but her silence spoke volumes. Carter realized too late that he had made the same mistake twice. And this time, there might not be a second chance. Hope was done hoping. She had made her choice. She chose Liam. Not because he was dying, but because he was hers. Because they still had time. Because she couldn't bear to love anyone else until that time ran out. And as Liam's condition continued to deteriorate, Hope clung to every moment, every breath, every whisper. She told him every day how much she loved him. She promised to keep going after he was gone. She promised to be strong. For Beth. For him. And Carter? He watched from the sidelines. A man who could have been her future if only timing had been kinder. If only choices had been different. If only heartbreak didn't always show up wearing someone else's smile. But this was the bold and the beautiful. And in this world, no love is ever really over. Not forever.